There's this massive, and I mean massive, tug of war for power going on in the US right now. And it turns out one single incredible story just pulls back the curtain on exactly what's at stake. So let's get into it. Okay, so let me ask you something that sounds, well, a little nuts. Can you actually place a financial bet on a decision made by the highest court in the land? It sounds crazy, right? Well, hang on, because that question is pretty much the key to this whole explainer. All right, so here's the deal, the short version. Picture this. A few years back, the president slaps these huge tariffs on imports. While everyone's fighting about it in court, one financial firm is supposedly, quietly, buying up the rights to potential refunds from that tariff money. And then, bam, the Supreme Court strikes the tariffs down. All that money has to be paid back. Okay, let's just make sure we're all on the same page here. A tariff? It's basically just a tax on stuff coming into the country. The idea is usually to protect your own industries. But it also means that companies in the US are on the hook to pay that tax. And in this case, we're talking billions upon billions of dollars. So this is where it gets really clever. How did this alleged bet even work? Well, a firm was supposedly going to all these companies that paid the tariffs and basically saying, look, you might get a refund, but who knows? It's a risk. We'll buy your claim to that potential money right now for cash. Say 20 or 30 cents for every dollar you might get back. It's a total gamble, because if the tariffs stay, that claim is worth zero. But what if you win that bet? What if the tariffs get thrown out? Well, suddenly that claim you bought for just 20 or 30 cents is worth the full dollar. As you can see here, you're looking at a potential 3 to 5 times return on your money. An incredible payout, all riding on a Supreme Court decision. And here is the kicker. This is where the story gets really juicy. The company that allegedly made these bets, Cantor Fitzgerald, and its former CEO, Howard Lutnick, just happens to be the Secretary of Commerce now. One of the key figures who was involved in the tariff policy to begin with. So, okay, this story, it's way, way bigger than just one financial bet. It's actually the perfect window into this huge clash between the major power players in the United States today. So let's break down who these forces really are. And to really get a grip on these groups, you have to understand the one tool they all use: leverage. Leverage is just a fancy word for the ability to influence things, to make things happen. It's not just one thing. It can be control over money, politics, the military, or even our technology. It's the crowbar each group uses to get its way. So who's actually pulling on the rope in this tug of war? Well, we can basically break them down into 4 big teams, or complexes. You've got the sovereigns, which is the government. Then you have the financial industrial complex, think Wall Street, the military industrial complex, and of course, the tech industrial complex. And this table here lays it all out nice and clean. On one side, you've got the sovereigns, the government, using national power, things like tariffs. Then there's the financial industrial complex. Their leverage is controlling the flow of money itself. The military industrial complex, they actually gain leverage from instability and conflict. And finally, the tech-industrial complex has its power in controlling our digital lives. So that raises a big question, right? Why is this tug of war happening with such crazy intensity right now? Well, it's because the United States is trying to pull off this absolutely monumental economic U-turn. Well, think about it like this. For decades, the U.S. economy was all about what we could call financialization, a paper economy. It was focused on exporting dollars and making asset prices go up, which made Wall Street incredibly powerful. The new goal is to reverse that course, to get back to industrialization, actually building real things and creating manufacturing jobs here at home. But that is a huge shift. It's painful. It disrupts everything. So why on earth would the U.S. try to do this now? What's the big motivation? And the answer really boils down to one word: China. See, while the U.S. was busy with its paper economy, China took all those trade surpluses, all the dollars we were sending over there, and used them to build up its real economy, its military, and its partnerships around the globe. They were playing a different game, and they were getting very, very good at it. I mean, this quote just nails it. It sums up the entire problem perfectly. It points out the absurd situation the U.S. found itself in. You can't really be a superpower when your biggest rival is also your biggest supplier and your biggest banker. Something had to give. Okay, so this brings us right back to where we started. If the national goal, the big plan, is to rebuild American industry, why does it feel like the government is at war with itself every step of the way? I mean, That's the real head-scratcher here, isn't it? The president uses tariffs as the main tool to push for this industrialization, but then other parts of his own government, like the courts and Congress, are actively working to tear them down. How does that make any sense? And the answer, the real insight here, is that the government isn't one thing. It's not a single hive mind. We call it the sovereign, but it's really made up of all these different branches and people, and every single one of them is getting pulled and pushed by those other power players we just talked about. Just think about it for a second. Sure, tariffs might be great for a steel mill in Ohio, but what about the giant retail chains that depend on cheap stuff from overseas? Tariffs hurt them. And most importantly, all this back and forth creates volatility and uncertainty for investors. That's a huge problem for some, but it's a golden opportunity for the financial industrial complex. Which, of course, leads us to the final and maybe the most important question. In all of this chaos, who's actually making money? Let's follow the real money. And here is the secret. For some of the most powerful players, the goal isn't to win the tug of war. The real game is to profit from the rope shaking. It's the instability itself, the chaos, the wild swings back and forth. That's where the biggest fortunes are made. You know, there's a fancy economic term for this whole phenomenon. It's called the Cantillon effect. And all it really means is that when new money or power gets pumped into the system, the people who are closest to the nozzle, the insiders, get the biggest benefit, and they get it first. And boom, that brings us right back to our story about the alleged tariff bed. The people who are closest to the action, the ones who help make the policies, who know the lawyers, who understand the arguments, they are in the perfect position to see the chaos coming and to place their bets before anyone else even knows there's a game being played. So I'll just leave you with this final question to chew on. When you see these huge power struggles creating all this chaos, and it seems like nobody can agree on anything, you have to ask yourself, is the chaos an accident, or is it the whole point? And in that chaos, who is really in control?